City of Socorro. Okay. The meeting of the City of Socorro Planning and Zoning Commission is set to begin. First and foremost, the City of Socorro would like to thank everyone and ask you for your patience during this difficult time we have been presented with. Everyone, please remember to silence any electronics to avoid sound interruption. No disruptive behavior or outbursts will be tolerated, and violators are subject to call disconnection and possible prosecution. In accordance with Section 418.016 of the Texas Government Code and by order of the office, the governor issued March 16, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Socorro will broadcast the meeting scheduled today, Tuesday, April 7, 2020, at 5:30, which is now 5:36, from the City Hall chambers located at 860 Rio Vista Road, Socorro, Texas, via telephone conference and live stream in order to advance the public health goal and practice social distancing to slow the spread of coronavirus COVID-19. The public that signed up and any presenters will be called upon by the presiding officer during the meeting to speak during the public comment or their agenda item during the meeting following Government Code 551.042. La reunión de la Comisión de Planificación y Zonificación de la Ciudad de Socorro está por comenzar. Primeramente, queremos darles las gracias y pedimos su paciencia durante estos momentos críticos que enfrentamos. Favor de poner en silencio todo equipo electrónico para evitar interrupción de sonido. No se va a tolerar ningún tipo de comportamiento perjudicial o revoltoso. A quien no siga estas reglas, su llamada será desconectada y puede ser infraccionado. De acuerdo con sección 418.016 del Código del Gobierno de Texas y por orden de la Oficina del Gobernador, anunciada el 16 de marzo de 2020, la Comisión de Planificación y Zonificación de la Ciudad de Socorro transmitirá su reunión hoy, 2 de abril de 2020, a las 6:30, que son las 5:38, desde la Sala del Concilio, localizada en 860 Rio Vista Road, Socorro, Texas, por medio del teléfono y será transmitida en vivo por tomar medidas preventivas para prevenir la propagación de la enfermedad del virus corona COVID-19 y a los demás por la seguridad del público. El público y los presentadores serán anunciados por el oficial conduciendo la reunión para poder hablar durante la sección del comentario público o después de la discusión del artículo de la agenda por cual se apuntaron, siguiendo las reglas del gobierno 551.042.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Mr. Lafuente, you're the head chair. If you could please call the meeting to order. Go ahead, sir.
All in favor? Aye. All right, well, much for joining us. This is great. See you next time. Take care of yourself.
Whoever is watching a video, I need you to please stop watching the video. It is playing back on the sound.
Mr. Lafuente, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but my it looks like my internet is disconnecting and connecting.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and start it right now. If you wish, just go ahead and say the time and your name. Mr. Lafuente, can you hear us? Mr. Lafuente, you're muted. Please unmute your mic if you can hear me.
Okay. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now we can. Go ahead and start the meeting, sir.
Okay. At 5:42 today, April the 7th, we start the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Thank you, sir. Item number 2, notice to the public open forum. This time is basically for people that want to sign up, that want to speak on anything other than what's on the agenda. Unfortunately, I do not have anybody signed up right now. So we're moving up to item number 3, consent agenda.
Okay.
I make a motion to accept the agenda.
I have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion made by Mr. Enrique Cisneros, seconded by Mr. Arturo Lafuente. Mr. David Estrada,
Yes.
Mr. Arturo Lafuente,
Hello?
Mr. Arturo Lafuente,
Yes.
Mr. Andrew Arroyos,
Yes.
Mr. Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, sir.
Motion carried with all 4 commissioners present and in favor. Item number 4, regular agenda, discussion and action. 4A is a rezoning and it is a public hearing. Go ahead, Joe.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item is a rezoning of Track 9, Socorro Grant Block 17. It's at 10143 Socorro Road. The applicant is asking for a zoning change from R1 to C1. This property is about 770 feet from the intersection of Socorro Road and Moon Road. I'm gonna share the screen. The reason they're asking for a zoning change is because they want to use the property to allow the parking of semi trucks. This this particular resident had applied for a rezoning back in 2014. They were asking for M1 and it was denied. The same year, right before they applied for a zoning change, they had gone to the Historical Landmark Commission. The Historical Landmark Commission was concerned that by allowing semi-trucks in this property, it was gonna create a negative impact to the historical corridor. So they recommended, because at the time, Ordinance 76, Amendment 1A, allowed the parking of semi-trucks. HLC recommended to the Planning and Zoning Department to limit the amount of semi-trucks that will be allowed, if they were allowed, to a maximum of 2 trucks. That's the reason why you see a driveway here where they were required to have a parking. Well, now that Ordinance 76 was eradicated by Ordinance 481, semi-trucks are no longer allowed to park in residential zones. Because in 2014, a rezoning was denied. They want to come back and apply for a commercial zone just for the purpose of allowing him to keep his semi-truck. According to the applicant, his only intention is to keep only 1 truck in the property at a time. The building that you see on the front towards Socorro Road, this is a mobile home. He doesn't want to remove the mobile home. He wants to keep it as an office, but he wants to have a truck parked in the back. This property is approximately 25,265 square feet. That's about half an acre. On the north of the property, all this area is R1. In the south, this area is R3. On the east, there's R1. And on the west, there's C2. It's right in front of El Campanario Ballroom. The Planning and Zoning Department does not recommend approval of this application for the same reason that was denied back in 2014. We did notice that the egress is too limited on Socorro Road. As you can see, the property is this one right here. The width of the lanes is too narrow. And you can see where the semi trucks have to go all the way to across the street so that they can back into the property, and this creates a safety issue. Is there any questions?
You said that was denied on 2014, right?
Yes.
Asking for the same permit?
No, back in 2014, they were asking for M1. Now they're asking for C1, which is a little less, it's a little more stricter than the M1. By allowing the M1, there was a potential of having junk stored in the property or other uses that are negative or would create a negative impact to the historical corridor. So now they're asking for a C1. A C1 is more compatible with the residential zone. However, because of the unsafe condition that we identified for the egress of the trucks, we don't recommend approval of this application.
And the zone is what right now? I'm sorry?
It's R1, single family residential. They're asking for C1.
And they're currently parking trucks there right now, right?
Yes, they have one truck. According to the applicant, it's the only vehicle that he drives. He's a truck driver. So his intention is to be allowed to keep using the property for parking his truck. He's not there all the time, according to him, because he travels a lot.
If we do allow him to do that change, he would be able to park more trucks there, right?
Yes, if he has the appropriate parking and pawning area, yes. Unless there's a restriction added to the ordinance upon the approval.
And I guess the issue is the width of Socorro itself that allows the access in and out of the property, right?
Yes, correct. So because it's so tight to turn into the property, you could see where the turn radius is. He has to go all the way to the other side of the street just to back into his property. And we received complaints from several people more than once. We just don't have it documented, but people have called us and they were asking, why is this person allowed to have a semi truck in this property? Because when he's backing up, according to some of the calls that we had in the past, it creates a little bit of backup on the traffic on Socorro Road.
Well, due to the Socorro Road is a narrow street, and there's not enough space for the one line turning to the land that they asking for commercial one, and there's no way to start stopping the traffic. It can cause an accident, so I make a motion to deny.
Remember, this is a public hearing. So
Oh, sorry.
you do have to open the public hearing.
Before we do that, would it be possible if the rest of the board was open where we can approve it to be commercial one, but not used for trucks passing a certain length so that it does become a commercial property?
Well, Mr. Cisneros, you can do that, but the problem is that the intention or the purpose of asking for the zoning change is to park his truck. Unless there's a restriction that he wouldn't be allowed to park the box, only the tractor, that would be another option.
And how would we take into account, because I think it's on the, we're gonna talk about it either at this meeting or another meeting where we approve or vote on the rest of Socorro being able to turn from residential to commercial, or how would that play into this conversation or in this example?
I don't think I understand your question, Mr. Cisneros.
So in previous meetings, we've had conversations about where we would turn the Socorro corridor into a commercial, where we were gonna try to promote it. I'm trying to log out so I can see the minutes, where the Socorro corridor would go from residential to commercial if people wanted to take advantage of that, being that it is one of the major corridors in Socorro. Does that make sense?
Yes, well, I think what you're talking about is the master plan, the Socorro's master plan. However, because not all the properties are the same shape or size, that's the purpose of having the Planning and Zoning Commission to decide on a case-by-case basis. We can have a master plan saying specifically we want to see commercial on the major arterials. However, there might be a situation where it may not work. That's why we need to be, that's why the reason why we have to present these on a case-by-case basis. Depending on the property or the surrounding area, it may or may not work.
Even though the change, the zoning change that they asking for is not complying with the historical area, right?
So the thing that the Historical Landmark Commission was worried about is because semi trucks, no matter how you paint them or dress them, they don't reflect a historical aspect. They're not historical, even if they have an office here and they try to design it to meet the historical guidelines, it's still creating a negative impact to the historical design. That's why HLC was asking the Planning and Zoning Commission or the department, I'm sorry, to limit the amount of semi trucks if they were going to be allowed. They were asking to limit it to no more than 2 trucks. And that was the only reason, because they're just not historical. Even the mobile homes, we presented cases to HLC before where they decided not to allow mobile homes for the same reason. They're not historical buildings.
We also got negative comments from neighbors. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Any other comment? Somewhere?
I don't have any questions.
There's a motion on the table, correct?
Yes, sir, but remember, you have to open the public hearing first before anything happens.
Okay. At this time, 55, we open forum on this item.
Okay, I believe there is nobody on this for the public hearing. If you want to go ahead and close it, Mr. Lafuente.
Okay, same the hours, 5:55, we close the open
Public hearing.
public hearing. We close it.
Okay, and yes, Mr. Estrada, you were asking if there was a motion. Mr. Arturo Lafuente made a motion to deny. I don't know if you guys want to continue with that or you want to take it back and start again.
Yeah. I'm still keeping the motion to deny this item.
Okay, do I have anybody second it?
I'm gonna
I
second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion made by Mr. Arturo La Fuente to deny, seconded by Mr. David Estrada. Mr. Ernest Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. David Estrada,
Yes.
Mr. Arturo La Fuente, Mr. La Fuente,
Yes, sir.
okay, Mr. Andrew Arroyos,
Yes.
Mr. Enrique Cisneros,
Abstain.
abstain. Alrighty, motion carried with four commissioners yes, one abstained. Item number 4B, this is also a rezoning and it is a public hearing. Consider and take action on the public hearing for the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of Tract 4B Socorro Grant, Block 27, from A1 agricultural to R1 single family residential for new development.
So this property is located off of Sylvia Road. It's track 4B, block 27, Socorro Grant. It doesn't have an address. It's still a piece of unplatted land. This property is about 1,500 feet from the intersection of Socorro Road and Sylvia Road. It has an area of 108,900 square feet. That's about 2.5 acres. According to the flood insurance rate maps, this property is in Zone X. The future land use map says that this property should be used for agricultural. The current use is, it's just a vacant lot. The owner is no longer using it for agricultural purposes. They're proposing to subdivide this land and they want to create 10 lots that look similar to the ones across the street, except they will be smaller. That's the reason why they're asking to change the zoning from agricultural to R1. On the north, all these properties are classified R1. On the south, there's a mixture of R1 and R2. This is gonna be a new subdivision that's coming up soon. It's gonna be called Villas de Socorro. On the east, all the land over here is R1. And on the west, everything is R1. On this particular development, the Planning and Zoning Department does not have any opposition for this request. We're recommending approval to allow the applicant to submit the preliminary plat for a potential dedication of additional right-of-way on Sylvia.
So they're gonna build lots for sale. They're not gonna build houses.
Yes, they want to subdivide. We still haven't spoken to the owner, whether he's gonna sell it to a builder or if they're gonna put lots for sale. He just mentioned that he wants to subdivide and create 10 lots that are gonna be facing Sylvia Road.
Is that subdivision is gonna comply with all the requirements from the Department of Socorro, the planning department, like funding areas, like rock.
That's what we don't know until they bring in the preliminary plat. We saw a conceptual drawing and what they were proposing or what they are planning on doing is on-site ponding, just because of this is already a developed area.
Mhm.
If they were to put a public pond somewhere, they would have to elevate some of the land. And according to the developer, it would be really, really expensive and unreasonable for him to do that just because Sylvia is already developed. Right now, the Lower Valley Water District is installing the sewer line and there's some construction going on. But it is a substandard road. And at this particular time, we don't know if they're gonna be able to comply with some of the requirements of Chapter 38 until they bring us a preliminary plat.
Is there any restriction from the city of Socorro in the size of the lots?
Yes, they would be if the only option is to do on-site ponding, they would be limited to 10,000 square foot lots.
The
with
land
R1.
already, the land already takes the water with rains. It's self-ponding right now, right? So it would kind of
Yes.
stay the same to where they would be self-ponding lots is would make sense to me, right?
Yes, correct. It's a pre-existing condition, and there's really no other way to manage stormwater here except for on-site ponding. But I guess until we receive the engineer reports and I guess any other special technical information that's required, we can know for sure whether it's feasible.
Does this one have to be closed or do we vote on it already or? does
No,
it
the-
need-
Public hearing.
It's a public hearing also.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Mr.
So-
Lafuente, would you like to open the public hearing?
To open the public hearing, is there any representing this land? Anybody representing this land and the public?
I believe no one is here at the moment, sir, or nobody's on the phone via phone.
Okay, you to get an emotion, I think the owner or some representative should be at the in present. Any can be in the computer, can be in the phone, or can be public. But at this time, there's nothing. There's nobody. We cannot open the public hearing, or we open.
No, you have to open it either way. If anybody joins in as of the moment, they can actually speak on the item if they wish to.
Okay, at 6:03 p.m. We open the public hearing.
Thank you, sir.
And I see someone just joined the call. Can you please identify yourself?
Yes.
This is Miriam Cruz.
Ms. Cruz,
Hi, everyone.
are you wishing to speak on an item?
Not on this one. I missed half of it, so I'm not prepared to talk or make any comments.
Okay.
Other than traffic. I mean, my main concern is always traffic, so I don't know if I missed that or if that was talked about.
Yes, they already closed public comment. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you for this item then.
Go ahead, Mr. Lafuente.
Okay, at 6:04 we close the open hearing, the public hearing.
Okay, sir, go ahead. If anybody wants to vote on this.
I want to make a motion to approve.
I have a motion made by Mr. Andrew Arroyos to approve. Does anybody second it?
I'll second.
Who's that?
Enrique.
Mr. Enrique Cisneros. Okay, I have a motion made by Mr. Andrew Arroyos to approve, seconded by Mr. Enrique Cisneros. Mr. Ernest Gomez. Mr. Ernest. Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. David Estrada.
Yes.
Mr. Arturo Lafuente.
Yes.
Mr. Andrew Arroyos.
Yes.
Mr. Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, sir.
Motion carried with all commissioners present in favor. Item number 4C is also a rezoning and a public hearing. Consider and take action on the public hearing for the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of tracks 2, 3, 4, 7, 7A, 8, 8A, 9, 10, 11, 12A, 13, 13A, 13A2, 14, and 14A, Block 5, Socorro Grant for a new development.
So on this one, it's also they're asking for a zoning change for several tracts of land. This property is on the north part of Socorro. As you can see, it's outlined right here. This line that you see right here, this is North Loop. This line that you see right here, this is Nuevo Hueco Tanks Road. Currently, there's a lot of construction on this part of the city. So this is the next phase of the development they're proposing. They're asking for, let me show you the existing condition. This is the zoning map. As you can see, all this here is agricultural land, everything that you see in green. This is the only area that is commercial. So they're gonna go ahead and plat from North Loop all the way to the city limit and then around, except these two tracks. They belong to someone else. Let me go back to,
So in the map that you have is all the dash lines that you have is the area they're asking for?
yeah, so this is how the subdivision will look like.
Mhm.
That's why they're asking for different zonings. They're asking for R2, C1, C2, and SU1. This entire subdivision will have about 282.5 acres, and it's owned by the Lower East Valley Holding Company, LLC. According to, let me go back to the other. So according to the flood insurance rate maps from FEMA, this property lies in Zone X, but there is a small portion on the easternmost part that is in a flood zone. This is flood zone A. And what it means is that there is no hydraulic analysis. This is only determined by an approximate area where you can see that it floods. The rest of it is zone X. This area here would have to be somehow, when they bring in the preliminary plat, we're gonna have to see a special analysis of this area to see how they're gonna control the flow of water. The adjacent land uses is there's agricultural land on the north, but this is already the city of El Paso. This is the limit of the city of Socorro. On the south, you have a combination of R2 and C2. On the east, there's vacant land. This area over here belongs to the county. It's outside the city limits of El Paso and outside the city of Socorro. This is county land. On the west, there's agricultural land. The Planning and Zoning Department recommends approval, so to allow the applicant to submit the preliminary plat and the engineer reports that are required for the development of all this land. Let me go back to the conceptual. Remember, this is not the final subdivision plat. This is only how they're proposing to use the land. Everything that you see in yellow would be single family homes. Everything that you see in this little area here, orange, would be multifamily, either apartments or some other structure. Everything that you see in red would be commercial area. The purple part here that you see, they wanna separate this land for maybe a school or something else. This is where the arroyo floods through, and it ends in the bottom of the hill, somewhere in here. The reason we're saying that this is an amendment to the master plan is because if you look at this is the future land use map that was approved by council back in 2011. The way you see this laid out is they did it like this because all this land is unplatted. So you have different densities scattered all over. Um, at the time, council was looking at having low density, medium, and high density in this area. However, the way they're proposing, there's a very slight change on the densities that were mentioned on this plan. If we go back to this one, you can see that some of the densities that they're proposing are a little bit different. For example, there's going to be more single family homes than were originally on the master plan. However, there's going to be a lot less multifamily than was shown on the master plan. Also, the commercial area, there's about 57 acres shown on the master plan. On this drawing, they're proposing about 27 acres more or less of commercial property. And everything that you see commercial is aligned along Nuevo Hueco Boulevard and along North Loop. There's also, when we spoke to the developer, the city's also asking, instead, in lieu of the park, there's gonna be a park here somewhere, but there's also gonna be walking trails somewhere on Inglewood. Inglewood would extend from North Loop all the way to I-10. And then there's gonna be a connection north. We don't know how the city of El Paso is gonna develop all this land, but you can see that they already own some of it on this area over here. And this is all gonna be commercial. What you see in blue, those are the ponding areas for different blocks. They're not gonna do the whole thing at once. It's gonna be developed in phases, just the same way they did on across the street from the Nuevo Hueco Chanks. This is the phasing plan. So what you see here in gray would be phase 1. And then eventually they're gonna bring in phase 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
No, there's no questions.
Also, I believe the engineers who are working on this project, they're on the phone. If you have any questions for the engineers, they're also here to answer any questions you might have.
Oh,
Keep in mind, this is a public hearing, so whenever you're ready to open it.
okay.
I have a question on, so a new development's 3% of the land mass is supposed to be set aside for parks. Are we gonna get 3% set aside for trails? What arrangements are we talking about there?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we're looking into because it's easier for public works to maintain. Instead of maintaining a park, we would have a trail along the major roads. We're thinking that this is an alternative. It would be a total of 2.5% of the required area. Instead of having a park concentrated in the middle somewhere, a trail system benefits more community, and it allows for connectivity for future development. For example, on Unit 2 of East Lake Valley, there's gonna be this road here, Judge Caldwell, is gonna go all the way to Moon Road. the plan that we're looking at for the future, maybe, let me, so Judge Caldwell is gonna run all the way to Moon Road. What we're thinking is maybe it'll benefit the city more to take advantage of all the drains and laterals that are everywhere throughout the city, and eventually create a trail system that is gonna connect every point for people to be able to bike and walk. And it's like having a park that connects the entire city using the drains and the laterals. We are working with the Water Improvement District. As you can see, they already started putting some concrete along some of the laterals. That's the purpose, because the city is thinking about using it for walking trails. And this is just the first part of that plan to see if it works or if it's gonna be of benefit to the community.
The walking trails was part of the design or was something recommended by the city?
That was something that was recommended by the city. With a conversation that we had with a developer, they agreed that this is a better option. However, they are still showing a small park over here. The reason for that is, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. You can see it has some parking spaces. So if people want to use it as a bike route, they can come in here with their bikes, park, and then use the trail system.
But it's a street, right?
Yes, it's gonna be a multimodal street that'll have biking trails, sidewalks, and it's gonna have parking spaces, etc.
Is the bike road is gonna be dedicated beside the street or street?
Yes, it's part of the city's right of way. So what you see here is a cross section of the potential shared path. You can see their sidewalk, parkway, parking spaces, and you have the driving lanes. This is another typical section showing the same thing. You could have landscaping on the sides. For example, here where you see the trees, you could have trees, and that'll allow for people to be walking comfortably. Instead of walking on plain sun, you can have like a shade system here, like all these trees providing shade for pedestrians. And then you also have certain points where you can have a small park for different uses. I don't know, maybe put some bikes or something that people can rent. I mean, this is just something that can be decided in the future when we see the preliminary plat.
On the north area, I saw some street that they're gonna communicate like a part of the future with something on
Yes.
right there. Yes.
Yeah, so there's stub outs that are gonna be here. We just heard, we don't know for a fact that they're gonna develop this land over here. But the purpose of having all these stub outs is for future growth that's gonna extend further north. We just don't know how they're gonna develop that area.
And how the city of Socorro got that information, the new development?
This is information that was provided by the engineers who are working with the developer. So I requested this information to show you, the commissioners, what is the conceptual design. That doesn't mean this is the final subdivision layout, because it might change a little bit until we see the preliminary plat. Of course, that's gonna come back to you so you can make your recommendations on the preliminary plat. This is only the
zoning change.
Yes, just to show you more or less how they want to distribute the zoning. That's why on your backup material, you're gonna see only the list of the zoning that they're asking, which is R2, C1, C2, and SU1. more than likely, everything you see in yellow would be R2. This would be R2. This would be either C1 or C2. It depends on you know,
The business.
yes, the type of businesses are going to be there.
Mhm.
Also, be aware that the Planning and Zoning Commission does have the authority to request buffers. If additional right-of-way you seem might be necessary, you can request buffers along arterial roads for the C2.
One more question. The water that is coming down from the freeway, there's a flooding area that is absorbed by I guess the school or park or whatever is that. How are they going to control that flooding area?
So this is something that we don't know until we see the technical reports from when. So before they submit the preliminary plat, the developer is required to bring in a series of reports because this is a potential problematic area. This is one of the reports that we're going to need to see and evaluate, and we're going to have to send it to our consultants for approval because, like I said, it is a flood zone. However, it's something that can be very easily developed, either by putting some kind of a berm or some kind of a system that will allow the water to flow in a controlled manner. The way you see it like this, it's just, this is, remember, there's no hydraulic analysis. This is something that we're gonna need to see because it's a flood zone that's recognized by FEMA. They are gonna be required to report to FEMA how they're gonna control this flood zone.
What's the total acreage that they're asking to change?
It's 282.5 acres.
So we're changing the 3% to 2.5. So probably half of the total development's gonna amount to a lot of acreage, right? Or a lot of space.
Yes.
The other question I have is are we talking? So just a point of clarification is: are we talking about bike lanes like the city of El Paso, or like actual trails? I mean, I know that right now it's all conceptual, but in conversations with the developer, what is it closer to being? On which
We don't
end?
know, like I said, until we see the preliminary plat to see how much area we have to work with. Also, we have to see the special drainage analysis of this area. So that might affect the way they're gonna design or their proposed design. We still don't know for sure how wide the streets are gonna be. That's something that we haven't spoken about until, like I said, until we get the preliminary plat, we can make a better decision whether it's gonna work out or not. It depends on the engineer reports. So that's some technical data that's gonna need to be submitted for us to evaluate. We also need to take into account a traffic impact analysis that's gonna be required with the preliminary plat. That also might affect the way some of the roads are designed. So at this point in time, it's too early to determine whether it's feasible or not. It's just a talk that we've had with a developer, and he's willing to cooperate whatever the city requests, as long as it's a reasonable request.
So in conversations with the developer, are we planning to have the 3% set aside for parks and recreation, or are we going to keep it at 2.5?
It should be 2.5%, and we agree to having the trail system in lieu of the park. Just because for maintenance purpose, it's a lot easier for public works to maintain a trail system than a park.
How many, on the conceptual side, how many homes are we looking at? I mean, probably a couple hundred, 250?
Well, the way they're showing it right now, I don't know, you can see the little table here in the bottom. These are the number of lots that will be used for residential. However, if they're required to provide additional right-of-way, this number might change. It might come down a little bit. They are proposing two multi-family sites. These two lots that you see here, they would either be apartments or something that would be multi-family. But every single, like all these lots that would have a single family dwelling, they're counting approximately 927 lots.
I mean, I'll be very frank. I love that they're taking advantage of the whole East Lake corridor, North Loop, making it all commercial. I think that's great. I think the only thing that I would have an issue with is, hey, there's a city we've asked for 3% to be allotted for recreational or park uses. And yes, that they're working with us to make it trails. I just, it's gonna be in the major corridor of the city, and we're holding them to a different standard than we hold other people or other developers.
So, Mr. Cisneros, if you look at the numbers where I have the cursor right here, if you multiply the total area by 2.5%, they're required to provide 7.06 acres of park.
Mhm.
They're providing 9.62 acres, plus the shared path. It's an additional 1.81 acres. The conceptual design is showing a total of 11.43 acres. That's a little bit more than what they're required. I don't know, can you see the numbers right here?
Well, that makes, hold on.
Yes, we can see it.
So on the legend right here, you can see that they're providing a total of 4 parks. However, they're not concentrated on one place. They're distributed, like, for example, there's a couple here, one here, and another one over here. And if you add the total area, this is what it comes up to.
Bear with me. Now, in other developments, when we do get the 3%, how much of the shared use path with landscaping parkway do we take into account? I mean, now that we're taking those two things into account.
Well, this is the first time that somebody is going to present a shared path. I don't recall of any other subdivision having a shared path. This is the first time we're going to try it and see if this is something that will benefit or this is just a trial and error. So we're going to see if it works.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lafuente, would you like to open the public hearing?
Well, at 6:30 p.m., we open the public hearing. Is anybody representing this rezoning there in the public?
Yes, sir. I believe Jorge Grajeda is on the line. And also, I don't know if Ms. Miriam Cruz would like to speak on this too.
I would.
Some of the
Okay, Ms.
Hello?
Cruz, whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a big question about, I'm glad that you guys asked a lot of questions, Mr. Lafuente and others, Mr. Cisneros. the fact that the planning and zoning department is only asking for the flood zone to be analyzed and for a project to be presented for that is a little, I think it's problematic, as we have seen and learned from the flooding in Coker Road. Obviously, things were built north of I-10 that then redirected water. And so if there's going to be a school or anything else built there, water will get redirected, potentially going into those homes, is my biggest fear, is what I look at. And so I would think that we would actually maybe want fire for an analysis to be done for the entire area, anything up, especially anything abutting a flood zone, and not just where the blue that Mr. Terraza showed was. That's just one spot. Oh, I wanted to ask Mr. Terrazas also if there's any confirmed commercial properties that have already signed up to be in this area. I share the same sentiments as Mr. Cisneros as far as the parks and the trails go. I also wanted to know if the city was going to share what types of requirements they're going to request for any walking trails. As we have seen, some developers have been very lazy in when they build a park and some others have not. And so if all they do is provide the space and plant a few trees, I don't think that would be acceptable. And so we hope that the city is going to actually lay out a very high standard of what acceptable walking trail would be. And also, I was wondering if the city might also consider requiring that the trees be one of the first things that are planted. That way, the 2 to 3 years that they take to build all of these houses, those trees are already growing. Since obviously trees do take a while to grow. And so there might not be shade for a while, even though homes are filled and people start living there. Apart from the 927 lots, was there also a traffic impact analysis that's being required when they bring back the preliminary plat? And then my last question for Mr. Terrazas is also the buffer. You mentioned something about a buffer, and I'm just not understanding what that means along the commercial or for the well, whenever you mention buffer, I'm not really understanding what that means.
Your 3
Thank you.
minutes are up, ma'am. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Jorge Grajeda with CEA Engineering Group, representing the owner of the developer. Just wanted to point out a couple of things based on your all discussion. The drainage analysis, I guess for Mrs. Cruz's comments, we will be analyzing the entire, not just the flood zone area, but as we're coming in with the planning of each phase, we'll be analyzing the entire development with the drainage infrastructure. We will not be letting go any of the developed runoff into your local streets, North Loop and Socorro Road. So everything will be contained within the development, within the holding ponds. You might see them there in a blue shade. So we've already done some conceptual drainage of the entire development as well. And again, we'll be representing that once we come in with the preliminary plat. An engineering report showing how the drainage is being mitigated into the holding ponds without discharging any runoff into Nuevo Hueco Tanks Boulevard and North Loop Drive. Also wanted to just go ahead and point out, as far as the 2.5% that you guys were requiring as far as the parkland. So kind of like Joe, Mr. Terrazas mentioned, we are the developers actually we're at about a 4% of the acreage that we're looking at
Mr. Grajeda?
proposing for parks.
Mr.
parks.
Grajeda?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I need you to speak a little bit louder into your phone. Sorry.
Just to make that point again on the park area, we're actually providing about 4 additional acres than what is required by code. But then again, we're separated into this some on the park side, as well as some shared use paths. with some of the sections that you see there on the exhibit, I know it's a little bit hard to read, but we're looking at a 8-foot shared-use path with landscape parkway that the developer would be bringing in as soon as we come in with the plat. Providing those walking trails, within each phase as we're coming in with an actual subdivision plan.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this?
I have a question. So north of this development, on the other side of the freeway, there's a huge development.
Mr.
I
Cisneros,
think
do
we
you
need
want to
to
wait
close the
until the
public hearing
public hearing
before
is
we move
closed?
on.
Even if we have a question for the engineer?
Yeah, because remember, he can actually answer it after the public hearing is closed.
Is anybody else wants to speak on this item?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay, we close the public hearing at 6:36 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Lafuente. Go ahead, Mr. Cisneros. You could go ahead and ask him now.
My question is because there's a significant amount of development north of there. Now I know it's pretty far because we're not on the bordering with the freeway, but being that development is further along, have you guys had a chance to? And I'm asking the engineers. Have you all had an opportunity to look at those plans to see where the water is going to run off, so that you guys can keep an eye on where that runoff from north going south is going to run?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've looked at the drainage. We've also getting some information from TechDOT in regards to the box culverts that are running across I-10. Actually the developments that are north of I-10, all of those that are within the county of El Paso in the Paseo Este area, those developments have been developed to retain all the all the drainage area, and so a lot of the runoff now that was kind of pre-existing has also been picked up on the north side. So you're actually probably getting less flow now coming from those developments because those particular developments already picked up a lot of the drainage areas. But in either case, we would be looking at the entire project area and all the watersheds that are coming into the project, and mitigation as well as what we need to do to take care of all the runoff.
Thank you, sir.
So actually, just real quick, actually, the more development that we get on top, the less water flow that we would get down beneath, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Because as they're developing, they're creating their own holding ponds, kind of the way you see this conceptual plan here, where we're showing a couple of those blue areas. Those would be the public holding ponds. So a lot of that runoff is already going to be retained in those runoff. So on the north side of the freeway, the development that they're doing, they're actually also required to pick up their developed runoff. So you're actually getting less runoff that trickling down southward.
Right. Okay.
Would anybody like to entertain a motion at this time?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Who was this?
Second.
And Andrew.
Mr. Arroyo's motion to approve, seconded by who?
I'll second it.
Mr. Cisneros?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Ernest Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. David Estrada?
Yes.
Mr. Arturo Lafuente?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Andrew Arroyos?
Yes.
Mr. Enrique Cisneros?
Yes, sir.
Motion carried with all commissioners present in favor. Item number 5, Planning and Zoning Commissioners Report. There is nothing to report here. Okay. Item number 6, Planning and Zoning Department Report.
The only thing that we have to report is that due to the ongoing coronavirus issue, our offices have been closed for the past week. We're planning on going back to work in one more week. The reason we're isolated or working from home is just as a precaution. That's the only reason why we're working from home, but we should be back in business We've been working with some of the builders, trying to provide them the best service possible. We've been continuing to schedule inspections regularly, issue out certificates of occupancy for closing on their homes, etc. The only thing that has been on hold are any new building permits or any type of permit until we go back in business after April the 13th. So far, that's the only thing that is going on. That's all I have to report.
Item number 7, excuse absent commission members.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I have a motion made by Mr. Arturo Lafuente. Do I have a second?
My second, Andrew.
Mr. Arroyos. Okay, we'll second it. Mr. Gomez.
Yes.
Mr. David Estrada.
David, you are?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Arturo Lafuente.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Andrew Arroyos.
Yes.
Mr. Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, sir.
Motion carried with all commissioners present in favor. Item number 8, consider and take action on adjournment.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I have a motion made by Mr. Arturo Lafuente. Does anybody second it?
Yes. Andrew.
Second.
Mr. Arroyo. Okay. Mr. Ernest Gomez.
Yes.
Mr. David Estrada.
Yes.
Mr. Arturo Lafuente.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Andrew Arroyos.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried with all commissioners present in favor. The meeting adjourns at 6:42 p.m. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Goodbye.